Chapter 3-8, Slopes of Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. So the first thing you want to remember is that parallel lines have the same slope. Problem 1, are lines L1 and L2 parallel? Let's take a look. So please find the slopes of lines L1 and L2 using the points here. Find the slopes and use that formula and see if they are the same. All right, I'm going to start with line 1. Okay, so I'm going to use M and a little number 1 to indicate that it's the slope of line 1. Change in y, we're going to subtract the y's. That's going to be 5 minus -4. And then change in x, that's going to be -1 minus +2. Okay, 2 negatives in a row make it positive, and 5 plus 4 is 9. -1 minus 2 is -3. And 9 divided by -3 is going to be -3. All right, so let's see if the other one matches. So the slope of line 2, change in y, I'm going to do 3 minus -4. Change in x, I'm going to do -3 minus -1. Two negatives in a row make it positive. 3 plus 4 is 7. 2 negatives in a row make it positive. Okay, -3 plus 1 is -2. And 7 over -2 is -7/2. So, are the slopes equal? No, they are not. Okay? So these lines are not parallel. They have to have the same slope, and they don't. It might look like it from the picture, but you have to calculate it and find out that way. Problem 2, what is an equation of the line parallel to y equals -3x minus 5 that contains -1, 8? So since we're trying to find the line parallel to this one here, there's going to be 2 steps. You want to use the same slope because parallel lines have the same slope, and then you want to plug in 1 point. All right, so I am going to use point slope form since I'm going to use the slope and 1 point. So point slope form is going to be y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So this is the equation we're going to use, but the original equation is in the form of y equals mx plus b. Okay, so this one right here is y equals mx plus b. All right, and we can see the slope m is the number multiplied by x, so the slope is just -3, and the parallel line has the same slope, so we're just going to keep the same slope and plug it in place of m. And the point that the new line passes through, here are the coordinates, so that's going to be x1 and y1. Okay, so it's that simple. So we have y minus y1, and y1 is going to be 8. And that equals m, which is negative 3, times x minus x1. So that's going to be x minus x1 is negative 1. Okay, remember the two negatives in a row make it positive. So it's really just x plus 1. And that is the final answer. Okay, so you could change this to just 1 plus sign if you want to, but it's just x plus 1. I didn't feel like rewriting the whole thing. Okay, so let's pause and try got it problem number 2. It says, what is an equation of the line parallel to y equals x, y equals negative x minus 7 that contains negative 5, 3? Okay, so once again, since the line is parallel, you want to use the same slope and you want to use this equation right here. All right, so remember when there's no number in front of the x, it's automatically a 1. Okay, and this equation here is in the form of y equals mx plus b. Okay, so m is the slope multiplied by x. So we can see m is just negative 1. Parallel lines have the same slope, so we're just going to keep the negative 1 and plug it in place of m. Now the coordinates of the point that the new line passes through, the first number is x1 and the second number is y1. All right. So for y minus y1, that's going to be y minus, and y1 is just 3. The m we're going to keep, that's just negative 1. And then x minus x1 is going to be x minus negative 5. Okay, two negatives in a row make it positive. And that is your answer. Okay, now there's a negative 1 here. If you wanted to, you can just keep it as a negative sign instead of negative 1. Okay, so just for your information, if this 1 was gone, but you still had the negative sign there, that's still the same thing. All right, it's still the same thing as negative 1. And of course, the two positives, it's the same thing as if there were just one positive sign. Okay, so I don't want you to get confused, but two negatives in a row make it positive. So if you want, you can just keep it as one positive sign. Anyhow, that's your answer. Y minus 3 equals negative x plus 5. All right, so perpendicular lines, they basically make a right angle, and the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. Okay, we'll go over what that means in a minute, but if two lines are perpendicular, let's say you have one line like that, and another line like that, they are going to make a right angle. So there are two steps in finding the negative reciprocal. You want to flip it, in other words, take the reciprocal, and then change the plus minus sign. All right, so we're going to do a few examples. All right, so let's try to find the negative reciprocal of 1/2. So there's two steps. The first step is to flip it, so 1 over 2 becomes 2 over 1. And then change the plus minus sign. The 1/2 is positive, so we're going to change that to a negative. Okay, and negative 2 over 1, of course, is just negative 2. All right, let's look at another one. Let's try negative 7/3, and we want to find the negative reciprocal. All right, the first step is to flip it. So negative 7/3 becomes negative 3 over 7. And then change the plus minus sign. The negative sign becomes positive. That's it. Okay, so why don't you try to find the negative reciprocal of 4? And I suggest you make it 4 over 1. All right, negative reciprocal of 4. 4 is actually the same as 4 over 1. All right, so the first step is to flip it. So 4 over 1 becomes 1 over 4. Second step is change the plus minus sign. It was originally positive, and now it's negative. Okay, please try to find the negative reciprocal of negative 8. All right, negative 8 is the same as negative 8 over 1. So the first step is to flip it, and that's going to be negative 1 over 8. And then change the plus minus sign. It's positive 1 over 8. Final answer. Problem 3, lines L1 and L2 are neither horizontal nor vertical. Are they perpendicular? Let's take a look. All right, so here is line L1 and here is line L2. I want you to find the slopes of each line and then take the negative reciprocal of one of the slopes. So at least find the slopes of each line, please. All right, so we have our slope formula. Okay, change in y over change in x. All right, so for line 1, let's do that first. Do it in a different color, the slope m of line 1. We're going to do change in y. Y is the second number. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 minus negative 4. Okay, we're on this line right here, line 1. 2 minus negative 4. And then the change in x, negative 4 minus 0. Two minus negative 4, the two negatives make it positive, and 2 plus 4 is 6. Negative 4 minus 0 is negative 4. And if you reduce that fraction, first of all, we can put the negative in the numerator. Okay, but these are both even. 6 divided by 2. And let me make more room here. All right, let's see. Negative 6 over 4 is going to be negative. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 6 over negative 4, that's the same as negative 3/2. That's for line 1. All right, now let's do the slope of line 2. Change in y. This is line 2 right here. Change in y, it's going to be 3 minus negative 3. Okay, 3 minus negative 3. And change in x is going to be 4 minus negative 5. Okay, so that's 4 minus negative 5. Two negatives in a row make it positive. 3 plus 3 is 6. Again, two negatives in a row is positive. 4 plus 5 is 9. We can reduce that. Both of these are divisible by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. All right. So we have two slopes, and now we just want the negative reciprocal of one of them. All right. So I'm going to do the negative reciprocal. All right, let's start with the 2/3. We can choose either one. And the two steps. Flip it, 2/3 becomes 3/2. And then change the plus minus sign. This is positive, so the new one's going to be negative. Okay, does that one match the other slope? Yes. -3/2 and -3/2 match. So the answer is yes. They are perpendicular. Okay, so please pause and try got it problem number 3. It says line 3 contains 2, 7 and 3, -1. Line 4 contains -2, 6 and 8, 7. Are they perpendicular? Okay, so I want you to find the slope of those two and then find the slope between those two and then take the negative reciprocal and see if it matches. All right, so again, just find the slope between these two and take the negative reciprocal. See if it matches, please. So let's start with the slope of AB. Okay, first we're going to do change in Y. So I'm going to do 7 minus -1. And then I'm going to do change in X. That's going to be 2 minus 3. Two negatives make it positive. 7 plus 1 is 8. 2 minus 3 is -1. And 8 divided by -1 is just -8. Okay, now let's do the slope of CD. Change in Y. You can really subtract going either way, just so you know, as long as it's the same way both times. So change in Y, I'm going to do 7 minus 6. Change in X, I'm going to do 8 minus -2. Seven minus 6 is 1. Two negatives make it positive. 8 plus 2 is 10. So I can see already they're not going to be perpendicular, but let's just finish this. So we want to take the negative reciprocal. Okay, you can do it to either one and then see if it matches the other one. So let's take the 1/10. 1/10. Okay, so there's 2 steps. You want to flip it. So 1/10 becomes 10/1 and change the plus minus sign. This is positive, so this is negative. And of course, -10/1 is just -10. Okay, does that match the other slope? No, it does not. Okay, so the answer is no. Not perpendicular. All right. So just find the 2 slopes, take the negative reciprocal of one slope, and see if it matches the other one. If not, they're not perpendicular. Problem 4. What is an equation of the line perpendicular to y equals 1/5 x plus 2 that contains the point 15, -4? So there's 2 steps for this problem. We're going to have to find the new slope and then plug in 1 point. So the original equation here is in the form of y equals mx plus b. M is the number that's multiplied by x. That is the slope. So we can see our slope is 1/5. But we need to find the slope for a perpendicular line. So we need to find the negative reciprocal. And there's 2 steps in finding the negative reciprocal. So you want to flip it and then change the plus minus sign. So the old slope is 1/5. Okay, so we're going to flip it and make it 5 over 1. And then change the plus minus sign. So it's negative 5 over 1. And of course, negative 5 over 1 is just going to be negative 5. Okay, so that negative 5 is our new slope. That's the new m. So the original was 1/5 and the new one is negative 5. Now we want to keep that new slope and plug in 1 point. Instead of y equals mx plus b, we're going to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, this is considered point slope form because we're plugging in 1 point and the slope. So the point that the new line passes through, those coordinates are x1 and y1. So y minus y1 is going to be y minus negative 4. And that equals m, which we said was negative 5, times x minus x1. So that's going to be x minus 15. All right, so we just took our point and we plugged it in for x1. And of course, we plugged it in for y1. All right, so that's it. The only step at the end is to change the two negatives in a row to positive. So it's really y plus 4 equals negative 5 times x minus 15. All right, let's try got it problem number 4. What is an equation of the line perpendicular to y equals negative 3x minus 5 that contains negative 3, 7? So the point that the new line passes through, they said that was negative 3, 7. So that's going to be x1 and y1. So I want you to find the new slope. You have to take the negative reciprocal of negative 3, plug that in for m, and plug in the point x1, y1, and then you're done. All right, we can see this equation is in the form of y equals mx plus b. All right, m is the number that's multiplied by x, so we can see that the slope m is negative 3. All right, so we're going to start with negative 3, and I suggest you make it a fraction so you can put it over 1. All right, and there's 2 steps to finding the perpendicular slope. You want to flip it, so that's going to be negative 1/3, and then change the plus minus sign, so that's positive 1/3. Okay, so that right there is going to be the slope m. So y minus y1, y1 is 7, and that equals m, so that's positive 1/3. And x minus x1, x1 is going to be negative 3. Okay, the 2 negatives make it positive, and that's it. So you just want to remember, if the lines are parallel, they're going to have the same slope. And if the lines are perpendicular, the slopes are going to be the negative reciprocals of each other.